He lacks intelligence and is definitely still affected by his mother Diana's untimely death. Additionally, he makes the completely absurd accusation that the media is too responsible for her. However, I believe he enjoyed the praise. Particularly as a soldier, he cherished receiving acclaim. However, he later faced criticism. First of all, he got intoxicated in public. The entire account she gives of the birth, the Portland hospital, and there was entirely made up. Everyone is aware of. The surrogacy story involving Harry and Meghan Markle has made its way into the mainstream media. Tom, do you believe Harry and Meghan are quickly realizing the consequences of accepting this large sum of money from Netflix? They also gave up their dignity and credibility, in my opinion. Well, that's our perspective, but it's not theirs. Since they have no other source of income, they are more in need of the money than before. They're just stuck with the devil now, in my opinion. They are connected to both their book and Netflix. And since that's the only way they can make money, all the criticism they will receive is meaningless. However, the children cannot be in the royal line if she hasn't had them herself, or if Harry hasn't been involved. Those small ones must be descended from royalty. They have no chance of joining the royal family without that. No, I pick folks whose lives are enigmatic and they wish to keep their secrets hidden because I enjoy delving deeper to learn what they don't want us to know. People believe her children are not real. They believe they are artificial intelligence. Definitely. After pretending to be the victim for a considerable amount of time, we are now witnessing that both of them are actually the aggressors. Had you hoped that your kids, Archie and Lilibet, would have had what you believe they won't be able to now that this choice has been made? To begin with, clear as throat, I have only returned to the UK for funerals or court matters. In this instance, the truth is that Harry and Meghan lied, regardless of whether you believe the birth was genuine, whether you believe a surrogate was used, or whether you believe Meghan had a moon bump. On their behalf, Buckingham Palace lied. Prince Archie's birth was completely covered up. Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, is sharing some intimate photos to commemorate her daughter Lilibet's 4th birthday. An uncommon glimpse of the little child in this photo with her mother, father and Prince Harry. Since the royal couple is known to fiercely protect their 2 children's privacy, the child's face is partially hidden. Happy birthday to our beautiful girl. 4 years ago today she came into our lives and the day is brighter, Meghan posted on Instagram. And better as a result. It was a terrible thing to do, and it was entirely incorrect. He is really severe and unforgiving. The very thing that Harry and Meghan originally attempted to hide from the public eye is now pulling them into one of their most intense storms to date. Archie and Lilibet are now at the center of a boisterous, chaotic, and intensely personal royal firestorm due to new rumors about Tom Bower's most recent allegations. These days, there are a lot of questions concerning public trust, family privacy, and what the couple has or has not disclosed. Additionally, it is becoming more and more difficult to stop the backlash. This story has become a full-fledged pressure cooker, with everything from palace silence to intense online debate. What began as whispers in forum threads and comment sections has now expanded into a much larger battle over legitimacy, image, and secrecy. Brand deals gone wrong and old palace drama are no longer the exclusive topics of conversation. They are discussing the actual family history of Harry and Meghan. Which is precisely why the atmosphere surrounding this circumstance feels so powerful at the moment. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are once again in the public eye, but not for the reasons they would like. Netflix, interviews, memoirs, and long-standing royal resentment are not the main topics of discussion this time. Their kids are now the center of attention. Right now, I don't envisage a scenario where I would be returning to the UK with my wife and kids. The things that they will miss are, well, everything, including, I adore my nation, you snort no. I've always done, despite the actions of certain individuals in that nation. Well, I miss the UK. Of course, I miss some areas of the United Kingdom. I'm told not to believe the talk. Harry falls deeply in love with Meghan at the very beginning of their relationship. They're already discussing marriage, but they're to find out they're married and she's pregnant long before their engagement is even publicized. And he's sitting in Clarence House with Camilla and Prince Charles at the time. But any child you love will probably have brown skin and ginger hair, Camilla laughs. This shift alone has made the entire incident feel much heavier. Tom Bower has generated controversy once more, and his remarks have led to yet another round of conjecture from critics who think there are too many facts around the For much too long, the Sussex family has been under strict control. Let's face it, this isn't being handled online like sporadic rumors that will disappear in a day or two. Critics claim that these questions did not arise out of nowhere, which is why the music continues to gain popularity. They contend that public appearances, timetables, meticulously planned moments, and Harry and Meghan's consistent decision to disclose just specific aspects of their private lives all contributed to the growing suspicions over time. The parents put a lot of effort into shielding their kids from public intrusion, but now others who think concealment always conceals something more are turning that same privacy into suspicion. The tone of the entire narrative becomes very harsh at that point. People keep posing the same pointed query on gossip pages, video panels, and social media. Because of this, I believe Tina is an excellent journalist and may have insider knowledge. How the Sussexes can give up both the Netflix and the book deal is beyond me. They will probably be living in a small hovel somewhere in downtown Los Angeles rather than a Montecito home. That is their issue, now they're stuck. However, the reality about them is that after donning a Nazi uniform at a party and going completely nude at a party in Las Vegas, he was unable to handle the criticism since he felt like a target. Furthermore, News International, Rupert Murdoch's company, hacked his phones. Group in London, what precisely has been concealed and why has so much been unaccounted for? Even such a request would seem completely inappropriate for a typical family. However, the rumours about Harry and Meghan, who have already been accused by their detractors of packaging their life like a public product, land with even more force and generate even more noise. Now it's important to note that none of these startling assertions have been publicly musically validated. However, rumors do not require evidence to proliferate in the realm of royal commentary. To encourage people to click, speak, and make connections, they only need a little smoke. After that, every picture, every old interview, every timeline, and every element that is missing begins to be re-examined as if it were a piece of a massive jigsaw. This is precisely what is taking place, which is why the tale is becoming more complicated rather than disappearing. Some of the more vocal detractors have attempted to frame the subject in terms of biological concerns and surrogacy rumors, but those are serious personal issues that shouldn't be discussed like cheap gossip. However, this hasn't stopped the internet from abusing it. The terms family, lineage, and succession always add drama to royal debates since they touch on the monarchy's very image. I pick people whose lives are mysterious, who want to keep their secrets hidden, and who don't want to be written about in general because I enjoy delving deeper to learn what they don't want us to know. 4 years ago, I published a book on Prince Charles that told the tale of both Camilla's and his own rehabilitation following Diana's passing. It was a number one and an intriguing tale. I found this to be fascinating when Meghan entered the picture. How will this unfold? To be honest, I didn't chat to many of Meghan's friends since she forbade anyone who could speak to me from doing so. I emailed her pals numerous times, but the majority of them never responded. Naturally, I told her father, who still adores her, in the end, whatever she is, she's still my daughter. Therefore, the reaction gets louder, angrier, and considerably more unrelenting than typical celebrity conversation when speculation begins to revolve around those subjects. Prince Harry is standing in the center of all of this mayhem. The prince is now portrayed in a much harsher light than when he was the playful, cheeky, and more approachable royal. He is being attacked from all sides on the internet, transformed into reaction memes, dragged in comment sections, and characterized by critics as either ignorant, stuck, or far too enmeshed in an uncontrollable tangle. His public perception has drastically changed, and it is not helping him at all. Whether or not they are entirely accurate, reports and comments emerging from Montecito create a frightening picture. They portray Harry as being under strain, engrossed in the constant headlines, and having difficulty with the never-ending stir of public mistrust. Although gossip may have formed that image, it is nonetheless the one that is becoming popular, and it's really difficult to slow down a story like that once catches on. Every new story builds upon the previous one until eventually the whole thing begins to resemble an unstoppable pileup. It's difficult to overlook the irony which contributes to the terrible viewing experience. For years, Harry has freely spoken trauma, bereavement, mental health, and the psychological harm brought on by malice in public. He is now being publicly portrayed as being overpowered, trapped, and crumbling under duress. Whether that characterization is accurate, it has entered the discourse and complicates an already intensely personal story. Then there's Meghan and the way detractors claim she's managing the whole situation. The image of her that is being painted is considerably more calculated, sharper, and colder. No emotional interviews, no public breakdowns, no frantic scurrying in front of Cameras, legal warnings, intensive damage management, tightly controlled quiet, and a resolve to say as little as possible as the tempest rages around them are instead described in the rumour mill. Although that tactic may be calculated, it merely makes her appear more cautious and suspicious to detractors. The twist, however, is, and it's an unpleasant one. The noise gets louder the harder Harry and Meghan seem to suppress it. Every whisper about cease and desist letters, every rumour about legal threats, and every indication that their team wants the issue resolved all seem to compel individuals to learn more. It turns into a self-sustaining cycle. The public begins to believe that if something is being safeguarded so vigorously, music, for example, there must be more to discover, and that is precisely how these scandals get traction. Because they believe that details suddenly look different when put up together, critics frequently revisit the same talking points. Pregnancy photographs that appear contrived, hazy timings, atypical public rollouts, low family exposure, and a family narrative that frequently seemed meticulously crafted are all mentioned. Whether it's fair or not, those are the things that individuals who claim the Sussex narrative has always felt a little too tidy keep repeating. When the public begins to perceive a story as being too polished, mistrust may quickly erupt. For the Sussex brand, this is why it feels so risky. Freedom, healing, family safety, and escaping a poisonous system were the cornerstones of Harry and Meghan's post-royal persona. It was intended to be a tale of finding serenity and making the decision to live a healthy life, but critics are now attempting to turn on its head. They contend that rather than creating clarity, the couple created mystery and that ambiguity is now working against them in the most detrimental way. Silence won't stop this, regardless of whether one agrees with Tom Bower's assertions, rejects, or is in the center. If anything, the absence of a compelling public response is amplifying the whole issue. Silence does not necessarily equate to dignity in the internet age. Sometimes it is interpreted as weakness, fear, strategy, or, and that is precisely what is driving the current response. The more individuals fill in the spaces, music on their own, the less that is communicated. Then there's another problem that detractors continue to bring up, and it's now one of the main topics of discussion. There has been constant conjecture because Archie and Lilibet have stayed mostly apart from the public-facing royal family. People draw comparisons between it with the well-documented conspicuous encounters that Prince William and Catherine's children shared with senior royals. They cite balcony appearances, public family get-togethers, and friendly official photos. Then they see virtually nothing on Harry and Meghan's side, which just fuels the rumors. No publicly shared moments of bonding, no intimate royal photos, no simple images to appease the skeptics. Because there is so little to look at, people continue to fill the void with their own presumptions, even though that absence may just reflect location, damaged connections, and the Sussexes' obvious desire for seclusion. Additionally, presumptions propagate quickly in the culture of royal gossip. A theory arises from a lack of images. A silence turns into a hint. A personal decision turns into a public fixation. This is the reason why everything is so unstable. Music, which ought to be a private family concern, has become a public test of trust, and the strain is only increasing. Some musicians claim that the palace is more knowledgeable than it claims to be. Some claim that the palace has no interest in dealing with the problem. In any case, social media theories, yelling battles on panel shows, and constant gossip fodder have filled the void left by everyone's quiet. And don't forget Tom Bower, who is driving this storm ahead. His audience does not perceive him as just another haphazard gossip voice pursuing clicks for quick views. He has a reputation eye for stepping into awkward situations and speaking things that others are too hesitant to utter. His remarks have more impact with individuals who already mistrust Harry and Meghan only because of that reputation. Because many people assume he wouldn't get involved unless he thought there was anything worth looking into, when he brings up a contentious topic, it spreads quickly. However, Bower's remarks alone are not as harmful as the public's perception of Harry and Meghan's lack of resistance. No explicit attempt to close the door in a way that detractors can't readily spin, no straight response, no forceful declaration. Now that quiet is a headline in and of itself, more individuals raise the same question every day: why does the reaction seem so constrained if the tale is so untrue? The speculation is sustained solely by that query. Quiet discussions have now given way to viral videos, trending hashtags, and studio arguments that use every old picture as proof. There are a lot of people on social media who insist that something doesn't add up, and they keep saying it until it becomes more important than the facts. This is how real-time reputational crises escalate: the loudness becomes the narrative, the response becomes the evidence, and the pressure becomes constant. This is unattractive from a public relations perspective, and there is no simple way to it. Authenticity, healing, family loyalty, and a fresh start free from palace rule were the cornerstones of the Sussex image. However, the entire foundation of that brand is now being attacked by detractors. They are targeting the family tale itself, not merely making fun of a speech or dissecting an interview, and no polished photo spread, glossy documentary, or well-planned appearance can completely undo the damage once it occurs. For Harry, the most profound aspect of this is his explanation of his decisions after leaving the royal life has focused heavily on fatherhood. He has repeatedly discussed being a father, defending his family, making music, and building a better future than the one he experienced as a child. It has been the core of his image, not simply a component of it. Therefore, when music critics focus on that aspect of his narrative, they are pursuing the persona he seemed to cherish the most. This is no longer just another round of nasty remarks or a tabloid feud. In the worst way possible, it has become personal. The assaults now target Harry's identity, his narrative about recovery, family, and purpose. The harm doesn't end with headlines when a man bases his public persona on being a father and a protector, and then the loudest critics start tearing into that role. It touches on how he is perceived, how is evaluated, and even how he could view himself. Because of this, the last image that Harry is currently being forced to see feels so cruel and unfairly harsh. The youngster who marched behind Diana's coffin is the same man who will always be associated with grief, suffering, and survival. However, that outdated perception is being replaced with something harsher in this new wave of critique. He is being portrayed in two extremely unpleasant ways, either as a man who has no control over his surroundings or as a man who is well aware of what is occurring and is unable to avoid the repercussions of it. Prince Harry is currently forced into two unattractive roles, neither of which enhances his appearance in any way. According to one version of the story, Harry appears to be a gullible spouse who is compelled to follow Meghan's plan without having any actual influence over its outcome. He appears to be actively involved in what critics continue to characterize as a royal-level cover-up in the world. Neither picture does music do him any favors. One makes him appear helpless and disoriented. The other portrays him as cunning and deceitful. Worst of all, he appears helpless in both versions, as if he is unable to even manage the narrative surrounding his own family. That's why Harry feels like he's in a terrible situation right now. Montecito is painting a picture of chaos, tension, and darkness. The atmosphere inside the home is described by commentators as heavy music, and like everything is fraying behind the scenes. According to reports, Harry is obsessed with articles, YouTube videos, and gossip sites. He watches while outsiders dissect every picture, chronology, and claim related to his kids. The picture nonetheless has a powerful impact because it depicts him as being engulfed in the pandemonium and imprisoned inside a narrative that he is powerless to alter, regardless of whether all of that is entirely accurate or somewhat exaggerated. Harry appears exhausted and deeply shaken, according to people close to the matter, at least based on the discussion. They describe a man who paces rooms, loses sleep, snaps at employees, and becomes more stressed every day. You can practically see the fear that his detractors frequently discuss etched all over his face. It becomes impossible to ignore the irony at that point. Harry was once seen as the royal who openly spoke about therapy, trauma, and mental health. He was meant to be the prince who used music to break the hush surrounding emotional suffering. However, opponents continue to use that same image against him, claiming that he appears to be trapped in the same spiral that he previously cautioned others of. Meghan, meanwhile, is being portrayed in a very other musical light. And the entire drama is amplified by that contrast. Meghan is characterized as icy, calculating, and strategic, while Harry is portrayed as shaken and disintegrating. Lawyers, cease and desist letters, legal threats, and attempts to stifle the story before it goes further are the main topics of conversation surrounding her. However, this is the catch: every legal action seems to increase popular mistrust. The more she seems to resist, the more critics assume she's attempting to hide something important. Rather than dispelling the rumors, the answer is integrated into the narrative. Because of this, the backlash continues to intensify rather than diminish. In public perception, pressure can occasionally appear more like panic than confidence. Therefore, every warning letter, every legal action report, and every attempt to quiet the clamor begins to be read as an indication that the narrative struck a nerve. Every new response becomes more fuel for the fire if people begin to think that way about, and once a scandal reaches that stage, it becomes far more difficult to contain since the reaction generates just as much attention as the accusation. Then there is the music and silence of the palace, which many claim to be the loudest aspect of all. No affectionate family portraits, no overt backing from King Charles, and no pleasant public moments connecting Archie and to the elder royals, Lilibet, not even the customary actions royal watchers anticipate for family-related children. The children of Prince William and Catherine, who have frequently been embraced at significant occasions, are frequently compared by critics to that. People frequently question whether the gap has more significance than the palace is willing to acknowledge because of the stark contrast. This distance is not punishment at all, according to an emerging perspective. It's defense. That line of reasoning suggests that the monarchy may have purposefully kept Harry and Meghan's kids at a distance not out of rage, but rather to protect itself from a scandal it believed would blow up later. And now that has brought all of this back into the public eye due to Tom Bower's remarks, some people think the palace is just holding out, either waiting for Harry and Meghan to deal with the strain or waiting for the whole issue to blow out on its own. This would sound more like a thorough royal reckoning than a typical tabloid fiasco if that idea ever gained widespread acceptance, because the stakes increase significantly when people begin to link controversies of this nature to the monarchy itself. The narrative then shifts to one of trust, reputation, heritage, and the institution's capacity to preserve its own credibility. This is the reason this problem seems so explosive. The public discourse is no longer just focused on Harry and Meghan, it is whether disregarded what the larger royal machine knew. Something or just desired separation from the beginning. Clearly, this story has transcended basic interest. The cacophony is no longer limited to royal forums, gossip accounts, and newspapers. The same question is now being asked aloud by analysts, mainstream media, and even longtime royal observers. Will Harry and Meghan ever provide a definitive response to put an end to this? The degree to which the public's attitude has changed is demonstrated by the fact that the question is being raised in such an open manner. For many, what was once considered fringe talk now seems like a serious crisis of credibility. And that might be the most harmful aspect of all. Harry and Meghan had numerous opportunities to defuse this situation earlier, according to their detractors. They could have responded more succinctly, addressed the strange gaps more directly, or dealt with the conjecture without so much legal care and quiet. Rather, they are perceived as having increased their ambiguity. Additionally, they are losing ground in the court of public opinion since silence is no longer shielding them. To those who are criticizing them, silence no longer seems honorable. It no longer appears serene, honorable, or above the chaos. Critics now perceive it as evasion. It appears to be fear. It appears to be a poorly executed tactic. The rumors get louder every day that passes without a more forceful public response. And each question that remains unanswered begins to sound weightier than the previous. Stories like this become part of a public persona and cease to be gossip in this way. The most depressing aspect is that Harry's reputation may already be more negatively impacted by than initially thought. He was previously hailed as the audacious, disobedient prince, Diana's son, the royal who dared to speak candidly and defy authority. Critics now characterize him as lonely, erratic, and uncertain of his true identity. Some of the people who earlier praised his bravery are now depicted in as taking a step back, uncertain about the guy he has become. That shift is cruel because it transforms him from a representation of fortitude to one of perplexity, and now fatherhood, the one thing Harry appeared to cling to, is being pulled into the middle of the storm. This is the reason it struck so deeply. In his public persona, fatherhood was more than just a chapter in. It turned into a tale of his salvation. It served as his justification, defense, and justification for leaving the royal lifestyle. He shared with the world how as a father grounded him, transformed him, and gave his life a new meaning. Critics are not merely assaulting a public image when they begin to doubt that aspect of the narrative. They are targeting the essence of his self-definition. Meghan, on the other hand, is shown as the one who is still attempting to maintain control over the board. Critics claim that she is acting as she always does during a crisis, pushing hard, changing the story, and attempting to stop the damage before it gets worse. According to reports, her solicitors are threatening legal action and sending out letters wherever they can. Here's the issue, though. Once moral doubt has spread, it cannot be eliminated by legal correspondence. If anything, they may strengthen people's conviction that they are on to something significant. That's why every judicial action appears to make things hotter rather than colder. The public is also aware of the disparity, which exacerbates the situation. People recall the beautiful Netflix videos, the polished posts, and the talks about generational suffering, healing, and honesty. Critics immediately accuse that same couple of hypocrisy when they appear guarded, elusive, and unable to provide clarity. Whether fair or unfair, a significant portion of the backlash is motivated by that sentiment. People get the impression that they were sold a brand rather than the whole reality. And disillusionment like that spreads quickly. The royal family maintains their distance throughout all of this turmoil, and that silence continues to speak louder every day. Not a single high-ranking royal has publicly defended Harry and Meghan. No declaration, no pledge in public, no subdued demonstration of assistance. They feel as though the organization has retreated and left them to fend for themselves. People naturally begin to wonder why no one within the palace wants to touch it, which makes the whole situation seem much more dire. Charles has probably been advised to keep his distance, according to some experts, as even a modest gesture of solidarity may backfire terribly if the rumors continue to spread. Whether that is accurate or not, it has contributed to the impression that behind-the-scenes discussions about contingencies are becoming more prevalent. Now people are speculating about titles, legal dangers, succession issues, and the potential political repercussions if this dispute continues to escalate. The fact that people are even asking these questions indicates how serious the public sentiment has gotten, even though no formal answers are being provided. This is what seems obvious right now. The perception of Sussex as a fairy tale is suffering greatly. The tale of a prince and his contemporary duchess beginning again, creating a more independent existence, and abandoning royal authority is currently being crushed beneath the weight of constant doubt, mistrust, and concealment. Everything seems to collapse more forcefully the more they avoid the pressure. Because of this, the story keeps becoming louder, darker, and more difficult for them to outrun. Ultimately, the public's perception of ultimately boils down to a single cruel decision: try to regain some trust by saying more, or keep quiet and allow the suspicion continues to develop, because these kinds of questions do not go away fast once they become attached to song, a family story. They stay, they decay. They mold people's identities. Additionally, they have the power to determine how history will remember those caught in the midst of them. Harry and Meghan staked everything on a tale of liberty, integrity, and creating a new future on their own terms. However, silence, suspicion, and one question that refuses to answer are now tearing apart that story. To pass away. Is Harry merely a man caught in Meghan's web? Or is he in something much larger, standing right next to her? And what truth, if any, is still being concealed? Above all, the public's concerns about Archie and Lilibet won't go away anytime soon. These questions will remain like an immovable storm cloud over the Sussexes and the monarchy until the pressure shifts. What are your thoughts? Take a look at the remarks. Strike.